Hello, this is episode 12 of Sweet Mountain Crafts. Today we'll be talking about lots of life, lots of projects, and a few finished items such as my brioche adventure shawl. So come on in and join me. Hi fiber friends, welcome to another Fibercast of Sweet Mountain Crafts. My name's Karista and I have lots of life to share with you. I cannot believe that it has been a month since my last podcast. I did not anticipate it taking me this long to get back in front of the camera, but I'm excited to be here with you today. Thank you to all of you that have stuck in there and are back to see more of what I have to share. And thank you for those of you that are joining me today. I look forward to seeing your comments and hearing which parts of the podcast today are things that you can relate to or something that sparks your creativity or your imagination. I am filming in Cody, Wyoming, which is going to be significant today because I will be sharing on this podcast some regarding the weather. And certainly my weather is probably not what a lot of you are experiencing. And even the fact that I am still wearing a shawl, it is chilly and cold. And though it is April 15th today and Easter is this weekend, it is winter in Wyoming yet. Wyoming doesn't wake up to the idea of spring until sometime mid-May or even sometimes early June. It can snow quite late here. But at this time of year, we love the moisture, so we're so thankful to get the snow, and it's still beautiful. I love snow. I love winter. I really do. I know that's not everyone's favorite, but I do enjoy the snow. So let's get started. First of all, what am I wearing? This is a shawl that I shared on my first podcast. It's the Catherine Ann shawl by GAIRNS, and it is a shawl that is just very practical. It's very fun and easy to wear. The yarn in it is by the fiber seed. One of them is called, I think the darker fuchsia here is brambleberry, and then the other, the colorful color in there is hearthside. I believe that's the names of these yarns. I enjoyed knitting this and I wear it often. It's a frequent shawl that I go to when I'm going out and just need a little extra warmth. So I have had a lot of life happen in the last month, hence the reason that there wasn't a podcast. One of the things that I got to do last weekend was my daughter's figure skating end of year came about. There was a competition, which she didn't participate in the competition, but there was also testing. And so that was fun to be there for her and to see her take and pass her next test. It's exciting to see your kids accomplish things, and it was very fun for me to see her do well with that. I was busy all weekend. When that testing and competition weekend comes to town, it's kind of an all hands on deck, which means that I actually spend time in the announcer's booth. That's the role that I've played for many years now. I think this was like my 6th year announcing, and my job is to announce the skaters as they come on the ice for their performances. So I was in the ice arena all day Saturday, or not all day, but a good chunk of the day on Saturday, doing announcing for the competition. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is that this is kidding season for us. And what I mean by that is I have 3 milk does or dairy does, and they are predominantly Nubian goats, but with a little bit of mix in there. Some Toggenburg and Alpine are the 2 different breeds that have kind of mixed in. And anyway, I keep those does for our own family's milk consumption. I use the milk for cheese and yogurt and making soap and just all of our dairy needs. So I, at this point, have 3 does. And in order to keep them in milk, I have to keep them bred. And of course, that means kids in the spring, which is so fun, but also stressful and kind of difficult at times. And unfortunately, this kidding season has not gone great. And I will show some video here. So this is what I've got going on. It's April 15th. It's snowy. And even though We've had multiple babies born. They're succumbing to the cold. Attempting to take bottle and towel and I have a pitcher actually to retrieve some milk, and we'll see what we can do for these babies. Hi guys, it's me in all my glory on a Friday morning. Just gotten up and out with the goats. But this is what you do when a baby won't get warm. You tuck them in your coat. She's looking for milk though, which is a good sign. I'm glad for that. So I'm gonna give her a little more bottle here. Try and keep her warm. She's shivering. So if I can get her to stop shivering and maybe get her some more milk, hopefully she'll settle down a little bit. Time to check on babies this morning. This is the day that it is today. A little bit of snow on the ground, but it's sunny. It's starting to warm up some. Here's Mama Jet. Hi, Jet. Hi, how's babies doing? Here's Dot. Morning, Dot. And there's babies. There's these two little guys. Oh, you guys look good. You guys look good. Hi, buddy. Hi. How are babies doing today? Huh? Huh? Oh, is it kind of chilly? Oh, just shivers for waking up. I see. Stretches. Stretches. And then there's this little guy here. He likes to hide behind the pallet. Good morning. You can see there that we've had a cold snap, and with that, typically when goats are due, it seems like they find the worst weather to have their babies in. And unfortunately that meant that we did lose a couple does. Let's see, I don't know if they were both female. I think they were both female, but we did lose a couple of little kids. The does themselves are doing fine. I have one buckling on one doe. I have one buckling on another doe. And then on my third doe, she currently has a little doeling and a buckling. And so hopefully we'll be able to keep all those 4 babies alive and doing well. At this point, they're vigorous and seem to be doing okay. So we'll just keep, it's supposed to also start to get warmer. Our temperatures are gonna come up. So I think the really worst of it is past, and hopefully we'll be able to keep those babies going and doing well. On my last podcast, I talked briefly about this incident where I had this sock that had this major blowout in the toe. And as you can see, I haven't finished that yet, but I had another sock that I had darned, and I could tell the yarn just wasn't going to hold up well. So I decided that it was time to knit some new toes and replace those. So I will insert just a little bit here, some images. I did take off the old toe. I removed the old toe. I knit the new toe completely just like I normally knit my toes, which is always kind of a bottom-up construction. And then I Kitchenered the new toe on my other sock. So here I have a half-finished object with the new toe on it. So this is kind of like a half refinished object, I guess, because as I said in my last podcast, this was a completed pair of socks that I had already been wearing, but the toes were blowing out, even though the body of the sock is still really solid and in good shape. So I am just replacing the toe of the sock. This one turned out really nicely. I'm excited with how that looks. Now I'll do the same for this one. It's just going to take a little bit of time to sit down and work on getting that next toe knit up. The next project that I'll share with you that I've been working on is my granny ripple. I've not made a lot of progress on this, but after the last podcast, you can see here, this is where I was. And I did add at least a few rows, so that's good to be able to make a little progress. This is a fun project using 2 yarns held together. I have my just white, basic white as my main yarn. This is a Caron Simply Soft, and then my ball of mini or like scraps and minis of hand-dyed yarns that I'm using to crochet this blanket. It's been fun to work on this. It's soothing and relaxing, and actually when I find myself getting extra pressured with life and things going on, all I can think is, oh, I can't wait to sit down and start working on my blanket again. And you can see I haven't had an opportunity to do a whole lot of that, but that's okay. It sits in a basket in the corner of my room, and I will get back to this soon. Just I've been busy enough that this has not been a super high priority. So it's fun, it's quick, and I will get some more work done on it on another day. My other blanket, that is still a far cry away from being a blanket, has some love that I have done on it for sure, in that I am making my hexagons. And let's see, I think I had probably six hexagons made the last time I shared, I believe. Maybe it was more than that. Anyway, I am continuing to work on hexagons, and from those hexagons I'm making these florets or flowers, and then from there I will eventually start putting these together. I'm waiting to put them together because when I get done with scraps, I throw them in my bag here and keep them available so that I can just sit down and crochet a hexagon whenever I feel like it. It's about 10 to 12 minutes for me to make an individual hexagon, and I enjoy the process of just making each little hexagon feels like its own little finished object. So when I get a hexagon done, I will throw it in this bag here, and usually just leave the tails on at that point. Throw it in this bag, and then later I come back and at some point I'll just do a quick weaving in and clipping of tails, and then I take those, and using some of my Scree sock base, this is leftover yarn from when I wind my skeins. Sometimes I have a little bit of a leftover amount on a cone that isn't enough to be a mini or a skein of yarn in itself. So I'll throw that little bit in my bag, and then that's what I use to connect the hexagons. So it's just fun for me. I take, minis left over from projects, or I was subscribing to Row 1 for a while, and those come as 10-gram minis, and I was taking those and using some of those in this. I use all different kinds of things, but I had a little bit of camera difficulty there, so hopefully we'll be able to segue into this next section without too much problem. But now let me show you a little bit about what I've been working on with my weaving. So I acquired a loom, as I said in my last podcast. I acquired a loom about a year ago actually, and really hadn't done anything with it. And mostly because it overwhelms me to some extent. There's so much new with weaving, so many new things to learn, so many new things to figure out, and it's a whole nother language. And while I'm enjoying it, I love working with it and I love learning this new skill. It is definitely not a huge priority for me, so I'm not putting a ton of time into it, but I have started weaving. So I'm going to show just a little bit here. There's a video of me just at the very beginning, just starting my weaving. And this shows more the action of the loom, this first video, showing the shafts as they move up and down with the movement of the treadles, where I'm working my feet at the bottom. Then on this next video, you can see that in this video, I'm moved the camera angle. I'm still just working the treadles and starting my weaving. In the corner of the screen there is a little bit of a video playing on my iPad, because I follow Jane Stafford, who is an excellent instructor. I subscribe to her School of Weaving and am taking instruction from her. I have really appreciated and valued all the lessons that I've watched so far, and I just had a lot of fun getting this going. From the previous podcast, I had shared that I had woven up my warp, had put it on the loom, but I hadn't finished dressing the loom. So in order to get to the point that I am in these two videos, I had to finish threading heddles and slaying the reed. See, aren't those words fun? I love learning this new language. It sounds like medieval, slaying the reed. Anyway, I'm having so much fun doing this and learning. So in these next couple pictures, you can see some of my progress. And this is just a plain weave. I'm not doing anything super fancy with the threading of the heddles or the treadling here. I'm just learning the basics, very basics. These are very beginner steps. With plain weave, there are an amazing amount of things that can be made using plain weave. But this is just a very, very beginning lesson for me. It's also been fun for me to share with my family and let them kind of see what I do. And then also there was a little girl that came over, a friend of ours that came over, and she enjoyed, I think she's like 7 or 8, and she had so much fun just playing with putting the bobbin back and forth and running the loom. So I hope to do more with this, but as I said, it's not a huge priority. So this is definitely one of those new skills that when I have opportunities to play, I get to. My hope with the loom is that I will get to a point where I get to use some more of my hand spun yarn in it. And just, I find that, or rather I have heard that weaving uses quite a bit of yarn, and I look forward to using some stash. I have some stash already set aside specifically for weaving projects, and I look forward to doing more with that. Now let me share a little bit that this is going to be just a quick introduction to this. I won't even finish fully explaining what I have in my project bag here, but hopefully on the next podcast I'll be able to, because this is leading into something much bigger and more exciting that's coming soon. But in the meantime, let me show you what I have in here. This is a project bag that I made for myself. This is a style of bag that I've had some of these in my shop in the past. I don't have any currently, but at some point if I get an opportunity to sit down and sew, I do have some project bags cut out and ready. All the pieces and parts are cut. I just need to do the finish work. So if I get an opportunity, maybe I'll get some of those in my shop again. But here I am working on a shawl. This is a crocheted shawl. I've just barely got it started. You can see here, this would be the top of the shawl this way. Actually, no, this would be the top of the shawl this way. This is just a simple single crochet stitch at this point. I am working using some SCREE sock yarn. This is actually a SCREE sock set. This is called Sagebrush, and then it has a coordinating mini that goes with it. And it is going to be where I have an accent section in the shawl using the mini. But this is a very basic triangle shawl. Just a very simple shawl. This is reflective, excuse me, reflective of a knit pattern that I'm doing as well. So here I have the knit pattern. You can see I'm quite a bit further on the knit pattern versus the crochet, but again, this is a very basic knit. It's a garter stitch with a little bit of lace work there in the middle. Knit shawl, triangular shawl. These are two patterns that I'm working up to be reflective of each other. So in other words, if you're a knitter, you would be able to choose the knitting option, and if you're a crocheter, you'd choose the crochet option. But the idea here is that I wanted to work with a sock set. So on the last podcast a month ago, I shared the results of the game that I had, Match That Yarn. And one of the winning yarns, actually the judge's choice, the yarn that I chose, was called Geyser Beauty. From Geyser Beauty, this main colorway is the Geyser Beauty color. And what I did for the month of March, any of my patrons that are at the Yarn Fanatic level received a sock set of Geyser Beauty with this coordinating mini included. So this was a fun yarn. I loved this color when I dyed it up for Match That Yarn. I knew I wanted to do more with it. So I had a lot of fun making up sets that then went out to my patrons for March, and I looked forward to working with it, so I made sure to grab it and get going on a project right away. I really love the colors and how they're playing out in that main color, and then this fun little accent panel of the coordinating color. It's just really fun. So these two yarns, as I said, they are labeled as sock sets, but by doing the shawl, I wanted to demonstrate, and with the shawl as well, that a sock set doesn't always have to be used as a sock set. Obviously, any yarns can be used for any projects, and I think using a sock set to make a shawl just is a kind of a fun way of having a little bit of an accent color or a little extra in your shawl with these minis, the coordinating minis that go with. So yes, those are both my SCREE sock base and a fun project. Like I say, I'll be more specific about what that project is on the next podcast. But for now, that's something I hope to get done. I'm working on, and we'll be finishing up. Hopefully this weekend I'll get those patterns written and start to get those ready for what they're intended for here soon. I should say here, one thing that I find that's really funny is I wear my watch to help control when I'm starting and stopping the camera, because you guys have already seen on my previous podcasts, I do edit. It makes it easier for me to feel like I can kind of collect myself before I share the next thing. So I tend to wave my arms around a lot as I'm talking and showing, and it seems like the camera responds to the watch as it's moving, and sometimes it wants to zoom in close and sometimes it stays a little further away. And when I'm talking to you, I don't see the camera. I am looking at my rather, I don't see the screen. I'm looking at my cameras, and so I can't always tell the distance that it's choosing to shoot at. So let's go ahead and see if we can fix that. Hello again. Is that a little better? I feel like when it gets so far out, you guys are so far away from me that it's hard to feel like you're seeing the projects and the details of them as I share them. So I apologize if the camera does that. I don't really know how to control that. So maybe I need to do a little research on how to control the distance that the camera is shooting at. But let's go ahead and talk about my next project. So I am actually, this is my one acquisition this month, and that's kind of crazy because I feel like I've, every month I just, a little bit more comes in, a little bit more comes in, but I've been so busy. I haven't even had time to think about shopping or purchasing anymore. And I, as I've just demonstrated, I have a lot of projects that I'm working on that I've been sharing with you guys. So I haven't really had a need for more either. But I did buy this new bag for myself. I love this bag. So this is from Delightful Works. This is Susan. I will be sure to share all her information in the show notes. But this bag came up and it's just cute. I love the bee themed with the hives and the honey and the, I'm not positive what this is, but to me it makes me think of like soap or something sitting there, or maybe it's supposed to be like wax honeycomb. I'm not positive, but I love this bag. I just think it's super cute. I was excited when Susan posted new bags in her shop, and I decided I needed to get one of these. Susan's bags are so great. I have already had one kit that I did with a bag of hers in February, and that was a lot of fun to put together. And then I actually have more coming up. So I have another kit planned with her, one of her bags, but that'll be later on this year. And I look forward to sharing that with you guys when it comes. It won't be this bag, it'll be a different fabric, but I'm excited for that. In the meantime, this is a good size bag for a sweater's quantity. This is a lightweight sweater, so it can hold all the yarn I need for it. So in this bag, I have not yet started this project, but I have in here Remix Light. I have four skeins of these. So my plan with this remix is to knit a derecho. And I'll put an image here of the derecho tee, and I look forward to getting started on that really soon. That's going to be kind of a summer knit that I want to work on. I'm actually looking forward to making this tee as part of a knit along that Sophie of Cozy Meadow Knits is running with a friend of hers. So I'm hoping to get this started here soon and looking forward to participating in that. My last work in progress that I have shared on here is being held again in my slopestyle bag. This is the Frothy Pullover by Carina Frost, and I honestly have not had a chance to work on this a whole lot. After the last podcast, I sat down and did some, so I do have some progress on it. You can see from my stitch marker here that I made some progress, but I think I was really hopeful on the last podcast that I said I had doubled my progress from the podcast previous to it. And I said, maybe I could double. Well, no, that wasn't even close to practical. So you can see I've definitely put some rows on. It goes relatively quickly, but there's no way that I've doubled again the distance that I've made it up since my last podcast. Even though I've had a month, it has been, as I've said, a very busy month. So I look forward to getting this going again, and as soon as I get those shawl patterns completed, I will get back to this on a regular basis. But at the moment, it is hanging out. If you want more details about that, you can look back at the previous podcast. I did talk about that there, and then on the podcast before that as well. I'll make sure to share more in an upcoming one, but rather than bore you with the details again, I will just say that that's another work in progress that's going to continue to get my attention on a future date. Woohoo! I made it. All right, so this is a project that I'd been sharing on previous podcasts, or at least on the last podcast. I don't know if I shared it before that, but this is a pair of socks that I had begun and was quite a ways through and was able to finish. This is the Sisters Not Twins sock pattern by Gingy Knits, and these were a really fun pair of socks. I worked up on 9-inch circular needles. This was the first time that I'd ever knit socks on circulars like that, and I really actually enjoyed it. It was a little different than I had anticipated, but it was fun to do. And I know that I'll be knitting other socks on those 9-inch circulars. This is using my SCREE sock base. This was a yarn that I dyed up for Two Sisters and Some Yarn podcast, and I loved the resulting yarn. These are colors that I enjoy myself, but I also enjoyed the pattern that Corinne of Gingy Knits wrote up for this. So I made sure to get this pair of socks done right away. I hope to, at some point, it's not on the list of to-dos right away, but at some point I will possibly go back and make the wristlets and the hat as well that go with this pattern. But I really just enjoyed working these socks up. I love the very simple but pretty lace work that's on the top of the foot here. And I actually really enjoyed the way that the sock goes from the cuff into the heel with the color there. So I don't often knit shorty socks, but I really liked the look of this here. And I think it's fun the way that she made them slightly mismatched. So I really enjoyed knitting these and had a lot of fun with them. The other thing that I finished is something that I've been working on since just after Christmas. So this has been on most of my podcasts so far. This is my Brioche Adventure Shawl, and I am done with the knitting. Yay! It is completed. Let's see. This is the side that I began on. So these were the colors that I started with. Really fun because it kind of works through the seasons or the time of year that I was working on this. So I started knitting this near Christmas, and it kind of starts with these Christmassy colors, and then it goes into these moody blues that just kind of make me think winter, and then it starts to segue into some greens, which kind of makes me think of March and springtime, and then it starts to get over to this warmer color that starts to suggest that warmer days are ahead. As I have already said, here in Wyoming we're not there yet, but we're getting closer. So isn't it kind of fun how it moves through those colors? I love how this turned out. I have not blocked it yet, and you can tell from the strings and the papers that are still hanging, I have a bit of work to do yet before this is fully complete. But the little tags that are hanging are this was all of the minis that are in this were from a yarn swap that I did with some friends online. And some of the individuals that sent their minis tagged them with the colorway name, the dyer name, and then other information if there was other information at times to share. So rather than just put this all together and get rid of those tags, I've hung on to the tags until I can take a moment to sit down and write all of the different colors that are on this. I want to put in my knitting journal here. This is my handy dandy knitting journal. That's from another friend online that shared that with me. I put all of my knitting projects in there, and I want to take the time to go through and write down all the different tags that I have. Some of the yarns were unmarked, so they aren't all going to get a label, but that's okay. When I get done with writing down the ones that I do know, the tags that I do have, I'll take those off, weave in my ends, and then I need to block this. One of the debates that I'm having is that with brioche, this is a brioche shawl, and as you can see in the brioche here, if I pull it really, really strong, let me try to do this here. You can see the color from both sides. Here, this pink section is a good section to do that on. So if I pull it apart really, really aggressively, the pink shows through more. Where if I relax it, the pink can kind of disappear to the background and you don't see it so much. So I'm trying to decide if I want to aggressively block it and really make those background colors show through, or if I want to leave it. Brioche is so squishy and soft that I kind of like it being a little bit more, a little less stretched, I guess I might say. Either way, this was a great project to use minis on. One of the things you can tell here that I did take the time to some extent to try to do some color coordinating so that there's a bit of a gradation here going through. But one of the great things about brioche in a two-color brioche is that even if the colors don't go together exactly, like they're not a perfect match, by having the two different colors, like on this section here, you can see that the two colors, the background color becomes a part of the foreground color because of the way that the yarns lay next to each other. So even though the colors aren't necessarily in the two different individual minis, as you put them together in this project, it almost gives the effect that they are more closely related. It looks almost like they come from a similar or the same ball of yarn. So it makes it a kind of a fun way to put such a random mix of colors together using the brioche. And the shawl has been a lot of fun. It did take a little bit more time than I anticipated. I forget that brioche does take more time, and so the overall process took me a little bit longer than I had hoped, but it's okay. I really love the finished project. I look forward to having it to just show and share with people that this is a great way to use up minis from your stash. It's a great way. This one uses 16 minis overall, so I could have continued, let's see, from beginning to end. I'd say that the overall shawl is probably about maybe 4.5 feet. I will use it or wear it similar to this shawl where I would wrap it around, probably around my neck and then back down. But yeah, it's been a fun project. I really enjoyed it. So I might have to do this again in some more neutral tones with a little less craziness, just for an alternative to this one, because I really like the look of it. I look forward to wearing these bright colors, but I also wonder if I wouldn't enjoy the same texture with a little more neutral, a little more subtle color differences. So we'll see, maybe sometime. I don't know, that'll be in the future, but I am excited that it's done, and I look forward to weaving in ends and blocking and getting that all completed. I'll probably post on my Instagram on Sweet Mountain Fiber when I get this all completed and blocked. I'll probably post images there of the final shawl. Now for a little bit of shop tack. In that video that I just showed, you can see that I've had a lot of fun dyeing up lots of different colors for different things. Most of those were all pre-orders, so those are things that were already listed in the shop, but are going out to customers that have just recently ordered them. So I figured it was time to do a little bit of a shop update. And as it is spring, I decided that I wanted to revisit the sets that I had done from last spring, the sock sets that I had created from last spring, that are based off, all the names I should say, are based off of lines from the poem called Pippa's Song by Robert Browning. So I'm going to show these. These are really fun, subtle sock sets. They are just kind of sweet, soft colors that make me think of spring. So here first I have Snail on the Thorn. And this one is, to me, makes me think of a snail that is on a rose bush. So that's kind of the inspiration here. This is more of a sage green again, almost with some grays and more of a grassy green, I guess, kind of in the green tones there. And then just a really soft, sweet pink that goes with that set. So that's Snail on the Thorn. Then I have At the Morn. This set is a bright and happy colorway. This one makes me think of a sunrise with just the nice golden hues that you might see in a springtime morning. So this is a fun set. I have found that At the Morn, this main color, I've put a lot of these colors on other things, whether it's fiber for spinning or on individual skeins that I also offer in the shop. And I find that At the Morn seems to be a fairly popular color. It's just a soft, warm, it's got peaches and pinks all throughout it. It's just a really fun color. And then this warm kind of caramel color that goes with it. It's just a fun set. So that's At the Morn. These are all on my Scree sock base. This is kind of my workhorse yarn in my shop. I find that it is so great for socks, hats, scarves, shawls, sweaters, all kinds of things work really well with this yarn base. So this is definitely a yarn that you will see often in my shop, is this Scree sock. It's a 4-ply superwash merino with nylon, so it's 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and it's just a little bit plump. So even though it's a fingering weight, and that's why I call it a sock yarn, it is a fingering weight, but it is definitely on the plumper side of fingering weights. So it starts to kind of push that DK weight size, especially as you wash it, because it just kind of blooms a little bit in the wash. And I find that it is, for me, I like it being just a little bit plumper of a fingering weight. Sometimes some of the fingering weights that I've worked with can feel a little bit too thin, almost like they could almost be a lace weight, and they just don't give you the fullness of fabric that you desire, especially for socks or even for sweaters. I find myself hoping for things that are going to be a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker, and so I really like my Scree sock base for that. This set is Dew Pearled Hillside. This has a fun main color. Again, this color has been in my shop in lots of different ways. It's kind of an emerald green with blue tones and bits of gray in it. And then its coordinate is this gray taupe colored mini. And it has little bits of brown that come through on this mini. But this is a great set for just being a fun, kind of a neutral looking, and yet still has some tonality and some colors there. One thing when I do my tonal dyeings, when I say tonal, what I mean is that, and I'm going to show you here on the thorn, or snail on the thorn, excuse me. I like adding just enough color that there's a little bit of interest without it being overwhelmingly bright on a tonal yarn. And the reason that I do that, it is always fun to work with yarns like this. It's speckled, it has bright pops of color. As you work through, you look forward to seeing that next change of color come out in the stitches. It's really fun to work with yarns like this. But sometimes when we're working on projects that we're going to be wearing more, the really big bright pops of color aren't as necessarily suited to certain color palettes, or are not as easy to match with your wardrobe or whatever. So I find that doing tonals still can give you that little sense of a change of colors and excitement as you're knitting or crocheting, but it's not that overwhelming, like, you know, stare you in the face kind of speckles, strong pops of color. So I love dyeing both. I love knitting and crocheting both. I love working with both the very bright, bold, speckly ones as well as the more subtle tonals. But I find that when it comes to something that you want to be more long-lasting, to be something that will just be more versatile, I find that these tonals just have a little bit more longevity maybe. And so just a different idea there when you're thinking about what your project is, how you want to apply it, how you want it to fit or match with things that you might already have in your closet or in your drawers, and just how you might use that for your projects. So then I have one more of my spring color series, and this is Larks on the Wing. And this is a very fun, again, tonal purple. It's more of a lilac and lavender purple, just very soft and sweet. And this also has a gray mini, but I'm going to try and show the difference here. This mini that goes with the Dew Pearled Hillside has just a little bit more brown, so it's a little more taupe colored, where this one is a little more of a blue-gray. It doesn't have the bits of brown in it that one does. But this one goes with the Larks on the Wing purple. So these are my 4 spring sets that I will be listing in the shop here. As I said, these came out last spring, and I slowly sold out of those last year, so I look forward to getting these back in the shop for this year. And finally, I started my Patreon. Let's see, it was the end of March that I started my Patreon, and I have enjoyed getting to start that community there and starting to grow that. I sold out of my Yarn Fanatics level or tier fairly quickly. At that level, I have the Geyser Beauty was the sock set that I sent out last month. I'm working on dyeing and getting ready to get those all prepared, those sets all prepared for April. The April sets are going to be based off of this image. So you can see that I have some fun, colorful, exciting things happening for my patrons. Thank you so much to those that have already supported me. The Patreon account is there in order to help support me and sponsor me as I work towards a dye studio space. I am well on the way to finding that space. I think that I have potentially found a space that's going to work for me. There's some details I'm trying to work out on that, and that's part of what's taken so much of my time over the last few weeks. So I'm trying to get that all settled out. As I get further with that, I will be sharing information on my Patreon page about where I'm at in that progress of securing a new dye studio, setting up my dye studio, getting everything going. If you want to join me to find out more about my dye studio and the progress of moving into a new studio and what that's going to look like, please join me on Patreon. You don't have to be at the Yarn Fanatics level, which, like I said, right now is sold out anyway. That is my highest yarn tier for any of my yarn patrons, whether you're a knitter or crocheter. But I do have a couple other lower levels that allow you to still be engaged on Patreon with what I'm doing and seeing some of the progress of me moving into the new dye studio space. It also shares a little bit of some extra videos of what's going on behind the scenes in my life with animals or family or whatever it may be. I put some little bits up on there that I don't share here on the podcast or on my Instagram. So make sure to stop by and check that out. And if you're interested in supporting me, then please join me there. In the meantime, I hope to reopen my Yarn Fanatics level, that tier. I'm looking to add some more people to that tier, probably in May. So if I can, if everything goes smoothly and I feel like I can take on that responsibility, then I will be looking to expand that tier, and probably not by a whole lot initially, because I need to be careful that I don't overwhelm myself in this process of looking for a new dye studio and trying to get that arranged, and then getting it all set up and prepared for me, and then moving into it. It's taking a lot of my time and focus. So I'm trying to not overwhelm myself by having too many people that are expecting a monthly yarn from me. But at the same time, I do enjoy having those supporters, and I enjoy feeling like I can connect with you guys there as well. So I will probably open that tier up and open up a few more spots in May. I'll be sure to announce that on Instagram if I do so, and then I'll also stop by on my next podcast and be sure to share what the details are on that. In the meantime, I'm going to list here on the screen. Thank you so much to my current patrons on Patreon. I so appreciate you guys' support and encouragement. All of you have such lovely comments that you leave me and messages, and I am enjoying getting to know you a little bit more via that avenue. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone that's watched the podcast to this point. I hope you find something here that you can relate with and enjoy. I hope that I've encouraged you in some manner today in your fiber fun, and I hope that you have just a great spring, and happy Easter. All right, we'll see you guys again before too long. Bye-bye. No. Yes, it was